Hello and welcome back to Harry's Jeti Clinic. In this episode we're going to look at creating your own customized digital trim and even, with a bit of travel limitation, your own digital primary controls. Ooh, what do I mean? Well, with the digital trim, it only moves when you hold the button and it remembers where it was when you've switched the radio off and on back on again. And it only moves in discrete steps. Well, what might we use this for? Well, imagine you have a separate servo on your nose wheel or tail wheel steering, for example, and you want a separate trimmer for that. Well, in the past, people have tended to use, for instance, the rotary control P8, which is fine. Trouble is, the position that it's in is not remembered by the transmitter. And so if you were to switch off and knock the rotary control P8 round a bit and switch back on, the trim just goes to the new position. The system allows us to convert P8 into acting a bit like a digital trim. And then you can do flight mode specific trimmings. And we can move further on from there. We can boost up the travel so that within a bit of a limitation, you've got a digital primary control in effect, which would be rather useful for controlling gyros, especially in conjunction with the built-in gyro software, which we'll look at in future episodes. So let's dive in, and as I explain it, it'll all really become a lot clearer. We've got a model with functions. I've created a steering function. It's on P3 like the rudder. Let's have a quick look. Here we go. Rudder servo, steering servo, wiggle the controls, they both go. And if I use the trimmer, the way it defaults, you can see the rudder servo trimming around, but not our steering servo. Okay, I'll put it back to neutral. Now then, on my jets, what I tend to do is disable the trim on rudder and assign it over to the steering, because I don't tend to need a rudder trimmer on the jets I fly. But you may not like doing that, or you might have a need for keeping it separate, or it could be any other thing whatsoever. And what you would do is go here and say steering trimmer is P8. Okay, and thus you've got, as I rotate knob P8 steering. But as I said, doesn't behave like a digital trimmer, won't remember the position when you switch off, and it's not flight mode specific either. So let's clear that out of there, say OK, and come to fine-tuning digital trim. Just while I think about it, have you ever wondered why you've got these two bars here? Those are two trims that you can assign. So we go into fine-tuning digital trim, and there they are. Those are, you can create your own digital trims that use those two bars to show you what's going on. So we'll go in here, we'll swing the rotary knob P8 as our trim, we'll come along, we'll assign it to steering, and there's the job done. It's showing a rather massive value because I've been playing with it beforehand, but here's the basic idea. Come out of there, show what's going on in the trim screen. If I'd set this up properly, it would have gone to 0 to start with, but no matter. Now each time I swing P8, it just moves it by one step. Remember, the system defaults to a 2% step. You can set it to a bigger step. The only difference between this and a digital trim button is that if you hold down the digital trim button, it will keep moving, whereas doing it this way, we've got to keep rotating the knob. Right, let's see if I can show you. Swing this round. So there we are. Each time I go past the trigger point, it moves the trim at one step. So, and it makes all the correct noises. There we are. So I can keep moving it that way, or if I rotate it the other way, past the trigger point, there we are. Now it doesn't matter where I leave the knob, because it doesn't behave like it's held down. Even if I'll go back one there. Okay, even if I leave it there, switch off the radio, come back again, the trim will be where we left it because this is behaving digitally. Okie doke. Now, a couple of things we can do to control this. We can go into Advanced Properties, come down to the stick switches setup, go to, in this case, P8. See the switch off and switch on points? That's the points where it's triggering the trim step. So if you want it to be much less rotation of the knob, you would bring that down to, say, 10% for that direction. And you only have to move the knob a little bit and it will ping. On the other hand, you might want it to be, you have to rotate the knob all the way. So I'm just going to put it on both sides simply for the demonstration here. You'd want both these numbers to be the same, you know, a plus and a minus number, but this is just for the demonstration to show you the difference. So there's our rotary knob. I've made it 10% on the clockwise travel. So you see, that's all you need to trigger it. But I've made it, what was it, 90% on the anti-clockwise travel. So we've got to bring it all the way around here to trigger it. So I say you would set them up symmetrically, but that shows you how to get the sensitivity of the knob that you want. Let's set it back to 75. Say OK. Now, back to fine tuning. Into digital trim, come to our steer. We can set it to a bigger step if you want. If you find 2% is just a bit too soft. One of the things is that it will only give you a total of 50% travel, which is what trimming's meant for. But if you were to change these values here, the rate, up to their maximum 150%, then it would actually go all the way out to 75% of normal travel. Okay, so if you were to do that, you're getting near the sort of travel values you would get with a control, which could be quite handy for setting up gyros, especially because it can be made flight mode specific, or separate, I should say. So let's do that. I've already got 3 flight modes set up, 1, 2, and default. Change it to separate, say OK. Now let's have a look at the trim screen. OK, flight mode 1, and we'll give that 30. Flight mode 2, well, we'll leave that at 8. Flight mode 3, oh, sorry, default flight mode. We'll do that. And now we've got flight mode specific trims on P8 driving our steering servo. Or, remember, if we turned the trim rate up to 150%, it would actually give us a maximum of 75% normal travel, which would mean you could use this to set up the gains in your gyro per flight mode, and it will remember the value that the trim had been set to on the knob. When you change flight modes, you can change your gain entirely. It doesn't matter, it will have remembered where you were in the last flight mode, so it behaves like a digital trim. However, if you're using an external gyro such as a Powerbox iGyro, Bavarian Demon Cortex, you can't quickly set the gain back to 0, because obviously you've got to be swinging the knob back and forward, tick, 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 trying to get there. And you can't use the trick of a minus 100% mix of the control to itself, because that won't zero it out either. Even if you, say, add trim into it, the values go all funny and all over the place. However, using something like a Jeti assist gyro, which has its own completely independent on and off channel, would work fine. And also I hope to produce videos very soon on using the Jeti transmitter inbuilt gyro software, which would allow us the opportunity to actually use a zero out setting there. So there you are. Have fun with making use of digital trim and, if needs be, digital control.